What's up everyone? Alex here. At some point in our lives, something inside us stirs a desire for adventure. Whether it's watching scary movies, riding thrilling roller coasters, or even hiking through unfamiliar places, we all have very different ways that we try to fulfill these needs. And wouldn't you know it? Every time we do so, we learn a little bit about ourselves that we might not have otherwise discovered. May I recommend another way to quench this thirst for adventure? This one's in the form of Atelier Ryza, a fantastic tale of daring do, which heralds the beginning of a new story arc in the series. But what separates Atelier Ryza from the many JRPGs out there? And is this adventure truly worth embarking on? Atelier Ryza, Ever Darkness and the Secret Hideout, is a coming-of-age RPG that takes place in a medieval fantasy setting with a heavy emphasis on crafting. Leading this tale is the eponymous Ryza, a spunky young girl seeking new adventures to whisk her away from her sleepy island life. Along with her friends Lent and Tao, Ryza ventures into the world at large with only her courage and curiosity in tow, a curiosity which leads her to a mysterious alchemist who launches her on the path of striving to better herself and improving the life of the people around her. With this fresh start is a brand new battle system that's a clear departure from the previous Atelier games. This hybrid real-time turn-based battle system will sound similar to other RPGs, but there's several key differences that separate Atelier Ryza from those games. At the heart of this new system are action points, or AP, which generate every time a character lands a normal attack. The catch is that the game will only allow you to have control of one character at a time. By default, the other party members you're not controlling will auto-attack once their turn is up, ensuring that you have a buildup of AP on a semi-regular basis. AP is then spent to use skills, interrupts that instantly give you a free turn, or leveling up your party's tactical level. The tactical level is super important, as raising it will not only add an additional hit to your normal attacks, building AP faster, but also unlocks additional skill effects. However, raising the tactical level will consume all of your gained AP and also increase the maximum AP needed for the next tactical level. Complementing the new battle system are orders, which allow other party members to attack your opponents during your selected character's turn. And finally, core charges are an MP-like resource that allows your characters to use items repeatedly without consuming them. That's a lot to take in, but that wasn't even everything. I just wanted to outline how complex sounding this new battle system is. Yet once you get a few battles under your belt, the battle system is actually quite intuitive. The real-time nature of the battle system might make you think that you don't have much control of what goes on in battle, but it's actually quite the opposite. The use of orders, in conjunction with properly timed increases to your tactical level, allows players to command and strengthen other party members without ever having to micromanage them. And while the option to alter your party's behavior to allow them to use skills is available, I never once felt that I needed to use it during my playthrough. The depth of Atelier Ryza's battle system isn't the kind that forces you to remember a bunch of minutiae that you might eventually forget, but one that is lateral, meaning its details are always meaningful and very close to the surface, thereby encouraging players of all kinds to experiment, min-max, and refine their strategies with the available tools given to them. If there's one thing that I'll say that I dislike about the new battle system, is that upon executing an order, you mustn't change your selected character, or the coming orders will be cancelled completely. I can't tell you how much AP I spent before realizing my mistake, and I hope that future games in this arc will address this better. That said, my favorite battle systems have always been ones that are quick and strategic, which allow for a variety of different approaches towards victory, and Atelier Ryza's battle system easily checks all of those boxes for me. The Atelier games have always, at their core, been about crafting and gathering, and Atelier Ryza is no exception. It's because of this that players will find themselves spending more time making items than buying items at stores, eliminating the need to grind for money. Much like its new battle system, the crafting synthesis system also received a complete overhaul. Each recipe is now visually represented as a connected node system, similar to Final Fantasy X's Sphere Grid, requiring a base ingredient to start. By selecting the proper ingredients for each connected node, you'll slowly work your way from one item attribute to the next, altering the properties of said item, allowing for an unprecedented level of customization. Prior to playing Atelier Ryza, I actually played a bit of Atelier Lulua to get a feel for the series, and compared to that system, Ryza's new synthesis system does a better job of representing what it is you're creating. However, the amount of information displayed can be quite overwhelming if this is your first Atelier game. Thankfully, Atelier Ryza allows you to auto-add ingredients to your recipe, letting players select what kind of quality it should use to assemble the item with, which can then help you get comfortable with the whole process. There are some very real hurdles early on for players who are trying to learn synthesis, which I'll get to later, but much like the battle system, repeated synthesis can help you feel more comfortable the more you practice it. And eventually, when you've synthesized enough items and get used to how things work, you might enjoy spending a good chunk of time just trying to craft the perfect weapon or item. I know this because I did, and I loved every moment of it, knowing how incredible my party was going to be as a result. Gathering, on the other hand, hasn't changed much from previous games, and still prompts you to use a tool, or tools, to gather from specific gathering points, which replenish automatically when you leave and come back to the area, so you don't have to worry about resources being scarce. You can also use gathering tools to hit enemies on the field to gain an advantage over them, with the axe lowering the enemy's defense, or the bug net delaying the enemy's initiative at the start of combat, just to name a few. One quality of the Atelier games that attracted me was the seeming absence of a world-ending disaster or some looming calamity in their plots. How many RPGs have we played where the premise literally fell into the example I just described? Atelier Ryza continues the tradition set by its predecessors, opting to focus on the challenges Ryza and her friends face in their everyday lives, while injecting it with meaningful side quests that help shape our views and perspectives on Ryza's home. I would be remiss not to say that there isn't any sort of danger. After all, what kind of RPG would this be if there wasn't some meaningful threat to overcome? It's not one of a world-ending variety, but it is severe enough that the heroes need to address it. Truthfully, Atelier Ryza concerns itself more about its characters than probably most other RPGs, slowly building up Ryza's growth as an alchemist, as well as depicting how each character's values and motivations shift and change as you progress further into its story. And as you sink more hours into Atelier Ryza, you won't be able to help but notice these changes, ultimately delivering payoffs that make you feel good for sticking through some of the game's tougher moments. It's this kind of intimate and involved storytelling that makes its characters feel more relatable to the player, further immersing them into Ryza's world. Of course, the game does this with an optimism and a kind of wholesomeness that contrasts heavily with other RPGs' often more dire and higher stakes themes. And while Atelier Ryza's characters are often faced with some form of adversity, they never dwell on it for too long, opting instead to act rather than to sulk. It's a good lesson to learn for anyone, and it's always great to see the game's characters crack a joke here and there, regardless of the severity of the task at hand, and helping to lighten the game's mood. This kind of balance is insane if you think about it. How can one make an RPG that still has stakes but not make it all about the doom and gloom? If you're ever wondering how that's achieved, Atelier Ryza is a perfect example of that. This is just one of the many examples of how the game impresses me, especially considering it belongs to a series that I've unfortunately disregarded over the years. In an earlier video, I mentioned that I have never heard of the Atelier series until this year. I now recall that I actually ignored the games in my youth, as the previous game's color palette made me think that they were geared towards a female audience. The art design of those games supported this idea, with characters displaying an overabundance of frills and curlicues, making the characters and environments appear softer than its contemporaries. On the other hand, the overall visual style of Atelier Ryza adds darker hues and earthy tones into the series' color palette, giving the game's visuals a different kind of vibrance that helps make its brand new art design pop. Even the game's logo is a reflection of the game's new art direction. I must state that I am not condemning the art direction of the previous games, but I do have to say that Atelier Ryza's new visual direction feels more inviting and grounded in the familiar, creating a more enticing world that you'll want to keep exploring further. The game's visual art direction also extends to its presentation. I commend the developers for being consistent with the kind of presentation that they've chosen. Every single page, menu, and UI element is stylized and designed to help further immerse players into the game, creating a visual consistency with attention to detail that is only rivaled by a handful of other RPGs out there. Persona 5 comes to mind. Accompanying its brilliant art direction is a soundtrack that enforces the feeling of the series, with sweeping orchestral compositions just as vibrant as the game's visuals, and even a familiar flourish that's reminiscent of Belle's theme from Disney's Beauty and the Beast. This latter part makes a lot of sense, as both Belle and Ryza draw from a similar parallel of wanting more adventure in their lives. There's so many memorable tracks in Atelier Ryza that it's quickly become one of my favorite soundtracks of the year. Breathing life into Atelier Ryza is a Japanese voice cast whose energy manages to transcend their performances, ultimately owning their characters' personalities. It's one of those moments where the voices truly match the characters they're portraying. The only thing missing is an English dub for players who might be on the fence due to its absence. A ding in Atelier Ryza's armor is its tutorials, and there are a ton of them. These tutorials can be so wordy that newcomers will probably feel that they're unwieldy and outright confusing. This is a huge onboarding problem, as the tutorials seem to be written to help longtime fans acclimate themselves easily, but they fail to give new players the confidence to experiment and play around with the game's many systems. This is a bit disappointing, given what I've mentioned before, that Atelier Ryza's battle system and crafting have so much lateral depth that the lack of a proper instruction can be a very real hurdle for anyone considering this game, especially those new to the series as a whole. That being said, I'm taking it upon myself to make videos explaining how both the battle system and synthesis works, all the while helping players understand what they need to pay attention to so that they can take that knowledge and run with it. The links for those can be found on the top right of this video, or in this video's description when they become available. Outside of the tutorials, I did notice some missing words or a word repeating infrequently, but overall, I think the localization is otherwise pretty good. That aside, I found it easy to fall in love with Atelier Ryza's characters and their world. Ryza's longing for adventure is something that anyone can buy into, and with companions like Lent and Tao along for the ride, it's not difficult to want to see what awaits this group of friends. When asked about the Atelier series, fans that I've spoken to have described it primarily as having deep crafting mechanics, but I see much more to it than that, particularly with this game. Atelier Ryza truly exemplifies a coming-of-age story, with Ryza and her friends overcoming challenges left and right, while still retaining the personal values that I've come to admire about them. They're not perfect people, but their journey of self-discovery to better themselves is just as engaging as many of the elements that comprise the game. Atelier Ryza starts off a brand new Atelier story arc in the best possible way, with wholesome storytelling, an exciting battle system, and a refined crafting system to boot, all of which are the perfect ingredients for a fantastic gaming concoction that's one of the highest quality you'll find this year.